Welcome to Ross's Game Dungeon. Today I'll be talking about the first game on this show in 3D. Well, actually, this isn't real 3D because I can't reach out of the screen and grab you yet, but you know what I mean. Test Drive 3, The Passion of the Test Drive. This game is such a mixed bag. If it was a literal bag that you could stick your hand in, it would be filled with gold nuggets and snapping turtles. This is a driving game, if you somehow haven't figured that out. It has the option to race against the clock, AI opponents, and up to 3 other people, but you take turns with other people, so what's the point? Now this screen is worth talking about right here. Every time you played this game, it would do a copy protection check with a code wheel. The way it worked is you would match up the different key shapes, car names, and so on the code wheel. Then you would get a code that you entered in. If you entered in the wrong code, it would only let you play for 2 minutes. Now I want to talk more about this, but there's something else I need to cover first, so I'm going to skip ahead here. But hey, here's a free tip. If a real cop ever pulls you over and asks you for information, you should not put him or her on hold. But you'll figure that out even without me. Okay, so here's the game. Glorious 3D vector graphics. Now I want to talk more about the graphics too, but I have to talk about the gameplay in this game first because it refuses to be ignored. Now, like most racing games, you race along the road and try to make it to the finish line. In addition to that, you also have to worry about the cops that will ticket you if you drive too fast, crashing into things, and dealing with other traffic. Right now, I'm only doing a time trial, but if you're racing opponents, they have to deal with the same obstacles as you. Now, this game also has an additional feature you won't read about in any ad for it, nor in the review for it when it came out. And that's, this game isn't so much about racing as it is a drunk driving simulator. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the acceleration and braking are good, the physics are great for the year it came out, and the steering is probably the worst I've ever seen in any driving game I've played in my life. Now, maybe you think I'm exaggerating, like those people who say worst thing ever about everything, but no, I'm really not. The steering likes to accelerate hard in whatever direction you're turning. It doesn't make much of a difference if you're going 10 miles an hour or 100. There's not even much of an analogy to what it's like in reality, but I may have thought of one. Pretend you're on a motorcycle or a dirt bike, and the bike is stationary, but you have the front wheel turned at an angle, 45 degrees or even more. Now pretend you hit the gas and give that bike a real jackrabbit start. You have great traction, and you just peel out of there, taking off as fast as you possibly can. You're going to fly off in that direction you're steering and maybe even wreck yourself before you've gone anywhere, right? Well, that's what the normal steering in this game feels like. You know what? I don't even have to explain it to you. Take a look at this. Wow, those are some good donuts considering I'm not even braking, right? Oh, and hey, now's a good time to mention this game has an instant replay feature. Wow, that's some impressive handling for a car, huh? Or any vehicle, really, besides those teacup rides at amusement parks. Anyway, I had to talk about this from the start, because this permeates everything you do in this game. So when you see me crashing because I swerved for absolutely nothing, it's not because I can see ghosts and you can't, it's just how this game is. Really, it's so fundamental, it's kind of incredible. I mean, this is a driving game. Spending more than 5 minutes to code and test the steering might have been a good idea. It would be like playing a first-person shooter where your gun backfires every 3rd shot, or a flight sim where the wings on your plane fall off. I don't know how this could have happened, especially when the other games in the series didn't suffer from this. All I can figure is the company had a hard deadline, and the boss started waving a gun around until the game got finished. You didn't patch games back then. What you coded was what you shipped. Now, you may think this game sucks because it's a driving game and you can't drive properly, so it's a bad game, end of story. Well, I can definitely understand that point of view, but this game is full of surprises. There's an old joke where there are 2 people talking, and it goes something like this. A man fell out of a plane. Oh, that's bad. No, that's good. He had a parachute on. Oh, that's good. No, that's bad. The parachute wouldn't open. Oh, that's bad. No, that's good. He was headed for a haystack. Oh, that's good. No, that's bad. The haystack had a pitchfork in it. Oh, that's bad. No, that's good. He missed the pitchfork. Oh, that's good. No, that's bad. He missed the haystack. Well, Test Drive 3 is the embodiment of that joke. So the driving is bad. Really bad. So what's good? Well, now let's talk about the graphics. Except for the trees and brush, which are sprites, this is a fully 3D racing game. Now, this isn't the first fully 3D racing game, but it's one of the first. I personally feel like the driving game genre has benefited more from the transition to 3D than most others. I mean, of course, first-person shooters have, but if you look at early platformers, strategy games, graphic adventure games, a lot of the late 2D ones look and feel a lot better than the real early 3D ones. But for driving games, I feel like this was such a breath of fresh air. I mean, I like old games, but it's hard even for me to get into 2D racing games. And to top it off, this was in VGA graphics. What that means is that this could use up to 256 colors on the screen. On PCs before that, they used EGA, which only gave you access to 16. The transition from 16 to 256 colors, I think, has been one of the biggest graphics upgrades in history. Forget 3D, being able to have more colors is huge. Because honestly, a lot of EGA games on the PC look pretty bad. It's not that you can't make graphics look nice with 16 colors, but on the PC at least, they almost never did in my opinion, even at the time. They usually didn't accept their limitations, and a lot of them looked like they wanted more colors, but they didn't have them. Especially compared to some other platforms like the Commodore 64. It also had 16 colors, but the art direction on many of those games looked way better than a lot of DOS games. What I think this comes down to is you can make a game look good with 16 colors, but you need the right 16 colors. In my senior year of high school, I was in a psychology class where the teacher was giving us these cards to demonstrate how colorblind tests work. And I could see the shapes in all of them, but some of them were much more subtle than others. And next to me, a friend of mine, wearing a tie-dye t-shirt no less, just kept swearing under his breath over and over. It turns out he kept failing the different colorblind tests, one after another, almost all of them. Now the funny part is that he was a big-time art student too. He was always doing drawings and paintings and so on. So he was what, 17, 18 years old? Had been doing art classes for years, but only just found out he was mostly colorblind. Later he said this explained why he never liked shading. He said it was always better just to make all the colors flat. So anyway, back to the actual review. The art direction on a lot of 16-color DOS games is lame, but not here. Look at that horizon and lush green hills. Based on reviews I've seen, people are pretty divided on the graphics for this game, because this isn't exactly the latest Need for Speed or Gran Turismo game. It predates both of those. Yeah! Personally, I really like these simple vector graphics because it's kind of surreal. There are no textures on anything, they're all flat colors. Maybe this is how my friend from high school sees the world. And hey, I promised triangles for this episode. Well, with very few exceptions, every 3D game is made out of triangles. But in modern games, they're so small you often can't see them anymore. But this is early 3D. You can count on your fingers how many polygons that hillside has. Taken all together, I think this minimalist, rough geometric style is really cool. And it's kind of a different experience than what you get from most games. Plus, when this came out, this was the crisis for 3D graphics at the time. I mean, you have day, night, rain, snow, fog, bugs on your windshield, streams, chickens, cows, lighthouses, planes, trains, detailed traffic, tunnels. For a 1990 3D game, this is bursting with details. And because the graphics are so primitive by today's standards, I actually think this holds up some because it's so surreal. I mean, look at this construction worker. Is he repairing the road, or is he trying to communicate telepathically with you? Can he levitate objects with his mind? While modern day games can look gorgeous, I feel like a lot of them don't spark the imagination in the same way that more abstract graphics like this do. Okay, so for me, these graphics are an example where less is more. But sadly, there are parts where less is just less. Specifically, the resolution. The original resolution of this game is 320 by 200, but it's meant to be stretched like I've done here. Even then, you only get about half the screen because the other half is devoted to your dash. I have to admit, this looks rough. I feel like the game would look so much better if they could bump it up to just 640 by 480, but that's not in the cards. I'm normally the sort of person who likes to watch everything full screen, but for this episode in particular, you may want to watch this in a window. It's just a bit overwhelming in full screen. So I can't blame the designers about that, but the low resolution really does not age well here. Also, while the color is generally great, I don't like the dithering effect you get from some of the landscape. Ah! Well, at least it allows them to create more shades, so that the world looks pink when you're in the snow. Just like real life. Okay, so the graphics are good, but they're also bad. Let's go back to the gameplay. As I mentioned already, this game has lots of details. What if you decide, hey, where do these power lines go? Or where's that train headed? Wouldn't it be cool to just say hell with the race and just drive off-road and start exploring it instead? And maybe hunt for crashed UFOs while you're at it? Well, you can totally do that. You can go off-road as much as you want. This is a total open world game. Somebody can fact check me, but I think it might have been the first 3D VGA open world game. Did you know that even though this game came out in 1990, this car is still really fast? And it doesn't just let you go off-road. There's stuff out there. There are hidden roads, alternate routes. I found a racing track out in the middle of nowhere. More chickens. This game has lots for you to explore. It would not surprise me one bit if there's a polygonal Bigfoot wandering around somewhere. This is by far the best part of the game. Even though the steering is abysmal, the level design is fantastic. A lot of these courses feel kind of like real roads. I love driving around exploring everything that's in this game. You have a lot of freedom. You can even try stunts in this game by jumping off a mountain or, hey, landing at some lake. Yeah, you guys thought I forgot, didn't you? I said there would be drownings in this game. Well, the drowning is actually interpretive. But if you drive your car into a lake and you don't get out of the car, there are only so many possibilities that can happen. Now, this is actually a serious topic, so I'm going to diverge a bit. If you're like me and drive your own car into a pond or lake on occasion, there's some safety tips you should know. First, undo your safety belt once you're actually in the water. You won't need it unless a boat or jet ski hits you, but the odds on that are usually pretty low. Second, it's better to open your car door window and get out that way, because when you're surrounded by water, the amount of pressure pushing against the door can make it much more difficult to open. Believe me. Whereas rolling the windows down is easy. The problem here is that a lot of car windows nowadays are electric only, so if that shorts out, you might be screwed. I'm not sure. The cars I've driven in the past have all been at least 20 years old, so I don't have much experience with newfangled technology like power windows. Now, if anyone in the audience has experience driving their car into a lake and had power windows, please share that with everyone. My guess is maybe you have a short window of time. Oh, that's a pun, I am sorry. Where your windows still work and you can swim out. All in all, it's easier to just not drive your car into a lake, but hey, your beer is not gonna drink itself when you're driving over a bridge. And while we're on the topic of killing yourself, I should explain that the haha message you've been seeing isn't normally a part of the game. That's a small hack I made for this video. Normally you get 5 lives, then it's game over. And you can totally beat the game with those 5 lives, but you'll have to drive like you're a defensive grandmother in order to survive. Anyway, the version of the game I downloaded and will link to came with a crack to give you infinite lives. So instead of seeing the name of the guy who cracked it 500 times, I changed the message to it to give it a little more flavor. And speaking of cracking, let's talk about that copy protection again. This game has been cracked. You can enter any answer for the code and it will work. The past 2 games I've reviewed have been freeware. They used to cost money at one time, but the original authors later gave permission for these games to be distributed freely. Test Drive 3, best I can tell, is abandonware. The difference is that this used to be a commercial game that you paid for, but then the company shut down or got bought out, and none of the people involved with the original game are still involved with the intellectual property. The company that does own the intellectual property usually doesn't care about a game made 20 years ago that they had no involvement in and are no longer collecting any money on. So what happens is some groups just kind of put the old game out there to test the waters. When they don't get busted for it, the game becomes abandonware. Now, a lawyer might tell you there's no such thing as abandonware. The company that owns the intellectual property still has total ownership of it, and it's their choice whether to allow this game to be released or not. Well, anyone who says that can go to hell. It pisses me off to no end when a company simply sits on intellectual property and lets games they don't even care about die because of how completely asinine our copyright law is. If you make a game but haven't sold it or supported it for 10 years or more and haven't been in a coma, why the hell should people be stopped from playing it or having it distributed? Don't answer that. There are no good reasons, only legal ones. To top it off, this game had copy protection. There are plenty of abandonware games out there that if it wasn't for piracy groups, you would literally not be able to play them now. Because the company in charge changed hands and the new owners did not care. This happens so often in the game industry. Now, to be fair, you can still buy a copy of this game on eBay. At the time of this video, there's a whopping 3 copies of it available. I guarantee you, if this game had not been released as abandonware, those would all be gone and you wouldn't be seeing this video. And I'm saying all this because I would consider this game at risk. Test Drive was made by the company Accolade, but I believe the rights are now owned by Atari. And Atari, in its current form, has a history of shutting down fan-made projects and sites devoted to keeping their games alive. All it takes for this game to be pulled offline is one corporate lawyer sending an email, then it's headed back towards oblivion. I want to be clear here. Between the copy protection and the legal grab ass, pirates are the only reason a game like this is still alive. Or at least for more than 5 people. I'm against games dying. And I think it should be fought by any means possible. I have no respect for laws that kill games, and you shouldn't either. Okay, I should calm down. I'll look at some cows. Let's talk about the music. There's not much to say here, really. The intro music is great. Another good candidate for a remix. After that, the music is just simulated in-game radio. It's amusing for the first 10 seconds, but it gets old really fast. I recommend turning it off. You can do that by pressing Ctrl-Q. I had to figure that out by pressing every button I could think of because I couldn't find a manual for this game. Okay, back to the gameplay for a second. Remember, everything good in this game has something bad to counterbalance it. Well, the exploration is amazing. So what's bad? This message. You see this message every time you veer off course for a few seconds. Now you can keep going as long as you want, but this message will keep coming back. It really kills the flow of the game and is the worst thing about it alongside the steering. This message screen is something I'm sure anyone who has been on house arrest can relate to. Or maybe some people in the audience are already on house arrest right now. If so, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Seeing that damn beeping on your leg collar every time you want to go get the mail? Christ. It's such a nuisance because the exploration is so good in this game. There's even a Cape Cod expansion for it that doubles the gameplay, although I wasn't able to find a copy of that. Did you know that Tom Hanks is actually obsessed with photographing lost gloves he finds around New York? He even has photos of them that he's put up online to share with others. I see this as some sort of psychological disorder, though it's pretty trivial and harmless. Well, I'm like that with some video game maps. There are some games I would love to see maps of, and will go to lengths slightly farther than is healthy to try to see or make them. I am lucid enough to realize this isn't normal behavior, and it probably represents some hidden disorder I'm not even aware of. But in the meantime, I love seeing game maps. Well, Test Drive 3 is a Shangri-La of potential game maps. You have all this 3D data, an open world exploration system with all sorts of hidden topography, and it's a game too old and obscure for anyone to care about besides me and whoever's watching this video. If I had the technical know-how, I would devote time trying to map out this game. I'm far more interested in what this whole game world looks like than I should be. I have to say this. If anyone out there has programming knowledge and could somehow hack apart this game to get to the 3D data, you would make my day if I could see what that looks like. And yes, I realize how sad that is. And hey, while I'm talking about niche interest, ironically, this game would be ideal for a speedrun. The horrible controls only add to the challenge. You can plot your course any way you want. And the speed of the game is actually tied to the CPU power. Slow, fast. So you can measure it in in-game time versus actual time. Also, get this, the detail levels in the game actually increase the difficulty. Watch this. Oh, that's no good. And now? If a tree falls where no one can see it or hear it, does it make a sound? I guess not. If you don't see it, it doesn't exist. Okay, I'm ready to wrap this up. I actually meant for this to be a shorter episode. That really worked out, huh? So, Test Drive 3 is a flawed gem. A flawed, cracked, scuffed up, ground up gem with stains on it. So what have we learned here today? That driving and the third dimension go together well, and that if you hit a cow with your car, you both lose. That's it. Thanks for watching. And hey, stay tuned for the Halloween episode if you want to see a clown get shot in the face.